Hello and welcome to another episode of the Girls to the Front podcast. I'm feeling the pressure this week after last week's incredible episode with Amy and all of the magic that Amy projected out into the world. I feel like now I've got to do a follow-up job and I don't know if I'm capable of delivering what Amy delivered. So I'm feeling the pressure, and also if you're watching this, there's no dog here either for you to look at in the background. So I'm really on my own. I'm feeling very visible and very under pressure to deliver something brilliant today. Anyway, so I'm going to get straight into it. This episode is going to be a shorter episode. It's just going to be some food for thought. But last week, I sat down with some of the girls and Girls to the Front, and we were having a very honest and open conversation around the world, I guess. There were lots of things packaged up in that conversation. There were lots of discussion. Lots of stuff around schools and the way that young people are treated in schools and the way that they often think that they aren't given opportunities or aren't given platforms to have their say or to be heard as human beings. And then that also led into a really honest discussion around pronouns and how we can be better humans to kind of include everyone that we're talking about. So they kind of like ebb and flowed throughout each other, and it was really interesting and really eye-opening to hear it from a completely different perspective. I guess I try really, really hard to be as inclusive as possible. And if you've seen the reel on the Girls to the Front Instagram where I talk about like one of my deepest fears around Girls to the Front is that it's quite, the language might be exclusionary because I'm talking about a gender specifically, but you know, actually the movement and the stuff I'm trying to create is for everyone, and everyone can be a part of that, and the principles that underline it actually are in place to benefit everyone. I think when I wrote the Girls to the Front manifesto, the idea was that you could pick that up and just drop that into any community, into any space, and it would still apply. I wasn't being exclusionary, or I wasn't trying to use language that would alienate anyone. So like the principles are always there. So I was interesting to then hear it from a different perspective around how navigating these things is really difficult, and I find it really difficult, and hearing it from young people who are ultimately like the biggest experts on this at the moment. So the idea of having pronouns and having different pronouns has come to the forefront quite a lot quite recently. I don't think wanting to identify as someone different is a new and novel thing. I think that's always existed, and I think that it's just presented itself in different ways. And in fact, I don't think it's presented itself because society has been so closed off from acknowledging that there is any other existence outside what they deem as normal. I've used air quotes there for normal. That people haven't been given the opportunity to identify as what they want. So now we're coming into a society and into a space where people are being a lot more inclusionary and people are willing to listen. And these young people are like full-on experts in it, you know, but they were talking about how they have training in schools, and the teachers will just put on videos and then expect them to learn from the videos and expect them to take what they want. And because the teachers aren't trained up on these things, then it's really hard to ask questions, and then they feel like if they have to ask the people themselves, the communities themselves, they feel like they're being offensive, or they feel like they are not being a good human, and then the conversation just kind of kept snowballing, and we kept talking about it, and essentially what we all decided was that you should always be open to asking why. And you shouldn't be scared of asking questions. I'm a firm believer in there is no such thing as a stupid question. And if you can put yourself out there and be willing to learn, then I feel like as human beings, we can grow and we can just be better and be better to each other, be kinder, be more compassionate, be more empathetic, just by asking questions and asking and not being scared of looking stupid. One of the things I tried to really put forward is that, and I see it quite a lot in my field, so day to day, like my 9 to 5 is obviously in academia, and I see loads of people get to a certain point and they just become very closed off from new and fresh ideas because they've got to a stage in their career where they are technically deemed an expert, and because of that they close themselves off from any new knowledge or anything new that might be coming up. So the example for me is that I encounter lots of experts in the field of physical activity, So trying to communicate that there are different ways of thinking about physical activity is very difficult. And I often find that I get, I think because I am quite a small girl, I think sometimes that becomes really, like, it becomes really hard to amplify that message. And I think there are still lots of cis white men in this sphere that think that their version of physical activity, which is often sport, is like the definitive answer, is the gold standard. But being able to try and communicate that actually there's a new way of thinking and there's a different way of doing things. And if we listen to young people, and if we listen to the people that are in the center of what we're trying to do, then actually we can make the biggest difference. But because they have deemed themselves experts, they're very closed off to the idea that there might be something new, there might be a different direction, and actually what they've done before might not be relevant today. It might have evolved. And I think that's something to kind of put in the forefront of your mind. I think anyone that starts deeming themselves as an expert, I think you should approach with caution. But I also think that you should live your life not wanting to be an expert. When I first started out in academia, I think my life goal was to be this world-leading expert or forefront person around physical activity and play, and that I was going to change the landscape of that, and I was going to be deemed an expert. And now, as I've got further into my career, I find that quite like a cringy thought, that I thought at some point in my life that I would be an expert in it, because I don't want to be an expert in it. I always want to be open and willing to learn. I want to be able to question things, and I want to be open to the idea that stuff that has worked can just stop working, and that actually systems and processes and opinions and thoughts sometimes do need to evolve and change to meet the needs of the people where they're at right now, under the kind of culture and society and how that's evolved, and, you know, those differing kind of climates that we have. But anyway, going back to that conversation, I kind of just wanted to make a podcast episode that just emphasised that you can ask why. You can question everything. And to be honest, you should question everything. Always be open to learning. Always be open to the idea that we are all work in progresses, and that, you know, there's nothing wrong with admitting that you don't know, and there's nothing wrong with kind of defaulting to someone who is actually having lived experience, or someone that is going through something, or someone, you know, just someone else that might be better placed to ask those questions. Answer those questions. Don't be afraid of challenging people. Don't be afraid of asking someone, especially when you don't agree, being able to ask why. I think if you can understand why, then you can have a better idea of kind of why these decisions are being made, what to do going forward, and how to like approach this with the knowledge that you have, and just be able to be a better human, essentially. So that's my message this week. Ask why. There is no such thing as a stupid question. And I think if we can do that, we can come together to be much more inclusive and compassionate. And I feel like we'd actually be less likely to offend the people around us, and to be inclusionary and to not be exclusionary, if we just asked people, and if we just had those conversations instead of being so scared that you won't be the expert in something. So I want to thank the girls to the front for having that open and honest conversation, and for like giving stuff back. And I think I left that conversation, I spoke to someone who was in that conversation afterwards, and just basically said that why the fuck aren't young people creating resources around pronouns that teachers learn from? Because the idea that you just give because in my mind, and correct me if I'm wrong if there's any teachers listening to this, in my mind, what I'm imagining is like a BBC bite-sized video that they're playing to the class to be like, these are pronouns, or this is sex education, blah, blah, blah. And then when they're confronted with questions, they become super closed off and they don't know why. The actual people that should be creating the resources are young people. It should be answering questions that young people deem essential questions, and give the answers that young people need from their experiences as well. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. But that's something I truly believe in. I think sometimes as adults, we place ourselves as someone that's got an authoritative position and that we should know best. And sometimes that comes with a very uncritical thinking of ourselves and how we formed those opinions. And a lot of the time we then just shove them back onto young people. And I don't think that's necessarily the best way to be. So this isn't just for other young people today about questioning why and being open to learning and being open to being a work in progress. This is also to adults. You haven't got your shit together as much as you think you have. You do not have the answers to everything. You should also question why. And guess who often have the answers? It is young people. Okay, so I'm going to leave you with a song this week. I think one of the best things in the world is finding out that some of the people that you love in music are actually in other bands, and then you can explore that music too. So this week I found out that Erica Frias is also in a band called Cosmet. So I've been listening to a lot of Cosmet this week. So the song I'm going to recommend is Cost of Breathing. It's got a very addictive little rhythm to it that gets in your mind. So enjoy that, and I will be back at the end of the month for a roundup.